Alright, we're going to make a little beer today. The first step is one-step sanitizer. I used it all. Scoop per gallon and some water. And that's what I started with. And my kegerator here, I got my yeast. Today, this is new. I haven't tried this kind before. Like this, you can ask a young lady, put it right between her breasts. Keep it nice and warm, especially if you can find a well-endowed young lady. So the first beer, what we're going to make today is a clone of Great Lakes Christmas Ale. Our family likes to call it Great Lakes Christmas Crack. So, cigar, takes an hour to brew a batch of beer, takes an hour to smoke a cigar. Coincidence? I think not. Alright, so we're ready to get going now. I've gotten my stuff together. Got my ingredients right here. Here's my list off the internet. I made some notes, short notes here. Got my grains, everything all laid out kind of in order. I put enough water in here to cover up the temperature probe. And on the front, of course, there's the gauge. So what we're doing now is we're starting up the fire. Open the bag carefully. Take our bag, and usually what I like to do is just kind of spill my grains. Stuff is going to happen throughout the whole thing. So we got that. Best we can. Extremely easy going partner. That could be a problem after the first time. So I make this, I just put a big loose knot in it. Basically got a bag of grain. Go ahead and get a little pot of water going on the stove, because we bring this up to 155 degrees, and then we soak the grains for 45 minutes. And then at the end of the 45 minutes we bring the grains out and we sparge it with some 170 degree water, which washes the sugar off the grain. So you put the grain in, make sure it's good and wet. Temperature a little bit high, so we'll note that on our notes. Temperature's warm, probably won't have to reheat, this will probably be good. So we're gonna let it sit for 45 minutes. Time it. Sticking it up against my fat belly, since I didn't have a big pitted woman. Yeah, it's starting to plump up. Good sign, eh? Keep it warmer for a little while. So we're about ready to start the sparge. Man fumbles with the noose, get behind a mule. So you don't really want to squeeze it, just want to dip it up and down like a tea bag. See, we got a thermometer in it. Make sure the temperature is right. This is a miniature version of making a full grain batch. If you did this full grain, you'd be doing this with probably an arm that would spray over the top of the grain and rinse it off. But we're just doing like an abbreviated version, and we're going to use a liquid, which you'll see in a few minutes. They make it into malt for us, and we can just buy that and use it. But if you use only that, I don't think you get as good a flavor in the beer. So we're kind of doing a little, getting some really good grain flavor along with our rich malt flavor. I hear you, Mom. Alrighty, crank it up.
You'll die when you die. It's gonna be bad. You'll die when you die. It's gonna be bad.
Oh yeah. Mmm. So I'm gonna bring it to a boil. Almost forgot, you gotta put 2 pennies in. It's like an old apple butter trick. Keeps it from sticking to the bottom. There we go. I see a boil. Alright, so I'm gonna shut down the fire. This is actually a combination of 2 colors. So it's kind of a light and a little darker. So it's bring it to a boil again. We just put all that syrup in there. It's a good idea to stir it. But what's going to happen is when it first starts boiling, it's going to boil over. Called the hot break. It'll start out really foaming up here. Take it down a little bit. Try not to blow it over the top. Keep it boiling though. And now we're gonna start our timer. Hops in. Here's 2 bags of hops. Nice. And again, this is probably going to make it foam up too. So we're going to put the first one in. Give it a little stir. Great. Alright, at this point I usually pour myself a homebrew, but I drank all my homebrews, so pour myself an ultra. You can't really... Gonna have a cigar. Fuente. I like to do instead of doing a regular cut, I like to do a nice X cut. Wasn't completely clean, but you get the idea. Makes some... Smells good. I like to, whenever that happens, I like to scrape the hops off the side, keep them in the mix. They all like to come up and stick on the sides whenever it boils over like that.
Rolling down the river, all my work is far behind. Rolling down that old river, leave all memories way behind.
This is the cooling coil. We're going to put it into the boiling wort so that it will sanitize it. I'm going to put in some Cascades. I don't know if you can see this, it's getting a little dark, but these are a little bigger. Put in half of it. I'm going to wait a couple minutes and put in the other half. There was some discussion on the internet about whether you use 1 cinnamon stick or 2. I'm going to go with 2. You know, I like cinnamon. And this is a clone, and I think every year it's a little different. It's always good. But I'm not making this because I'm trying to rip off anybody. We can't buy that beer here. My brother-in-law brings it to me. I make a lot of beers that you can't buy, but you know, things are getting better, and we can buy a lot more beers than we used to. But you know, my big ass ale, of course, is my beer. So we're going to throw in the ginger roots and the cinnamon sticks. And we're now in the last 5 minutes. Crank it up a little bit. Let it boil those in good. I haven't used this kind of yeast before, but it says it's good enough for 5 gallons. So this is a high alcohol beer, so I'm going to double up the yeast. But we're not doing that until it cools down. Alright, so we're going to crank off the heat. And this particular recipe calls for honey. Honey was one of the original things you made beer with back in the day. This is actually local honey from my friend Luther Quick, and it says after you turn the flame off, put the honey in. So we're going to put the honey in. Basically, this is adding sugar to the wort, so that it... Alright, so we're down to about 74 degrees. So that's probably good enough. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the wort and we're going to put into this previously sanitized bucket, sanitizing solution, and I'm going to put this bag over the top. There's a lot of ways they tell you to do this. Some people like to stir it and get it all in the middle and siphon it out. You know, I'm just too impatient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out, rinse it off while it's still wet, and then I'm going to pour the wort through this bag. We're at 4 gallons, even though we started with 6. It's at least 5. Alright, so we're down. In case you're wondering why I use a bucket when I have this glass carboys, I always like to make the first run of the bucket. This can be really high gravity beer. This one is just going to go crazy when it ferments. So what I did, I bought like a stir. I use this to aerate the wort. I don't know anybody else that does this, but works for me. So I have a clock or pull my phone up there, and I do 60 seconds 5 times. Okay, now what we want to do now is we want to find out how much alcohol is going to be in this beer. This is a refractometer. So you take some beer with your beer thief and you drop it in here. 0 is up here. It's floating pretty high. That's above that, so it's point. I'm going to estimate that at a clean 8. Because there's a line there. Looks about spaced right. So we're going to say this is starting out at, I don't know, man, it might even be higher than that. 1.08. We're going to say that. That's what we're going to write there. 5 times 5 minutes of aeration. So we're looking pretty good. I know what's going to happen. I've been here before. So throw some sanitizer on them. Just the top on it, and you stick it in this hole, and then it bubbles as the beer. But this beer is too strong. So what we're going to do, because we've had this hose soaking, is we're going to put this big fat hose in here for the first couple days. And we will come back tomorrow. Just put in there a little bit. There you go. So now we have a water seal, and this is going to start fermenting, and that's going to look like a motorboat by probably tomorrow evening. We have finished our batch of beer. All we got left to do is make a few notes, and clean up, and have a homebrew. See you next time. So I forgot the last part that you have to do is taste this shit. It's really good. It's got party in the fermenter.